Okay, Pasuk Gimel. Av choviv amim. He also endeared the amim, the nations. So Rashi, we just began this yesterday, explains that amim is referring to the shvatim. Gam chiva yisera chiva v'sa shvatim. Kol echad v'echad koriyam. Kol kedosha b'yodecho. All the kedoshim are in your hand, meaning they're bound up with you. They tukal raglecho, and they submit livraglecho. They submit to what? To your feet. Kaviyocho, yisam edabrasecho. And they carry your dictate. Let's see, Rashi, we'll elaborate on this. The neshamos of the tzaddikim are hidden with him. They're bound up with him. This is, we mentioned that Avigail said regarding the neshama of David HaMelech that his neshama is bound up with Hashem in the bond of life. And why are they worthy? This is important. Why only the Jew could be bound up with Hashem? Why does he have that capacity? They're worthy, they're qualified for this. Because they submitted themselves, or they bent themselves at the foot of the mountain at Sinai, tukoloshen pualu, hisvakhu, meaning they pushed themselves, they submitted themselves. This is important. They carried upon themselves the old Torah, the yoke of Torah. That is the reason why it's choviv amim. Okay, now we find that Yaakov, before he passed away, he blesses each one of his children. And each one of his children, he understood the potential of each one of his sons. And therefore, each bracha that he gave to each one of his sons before he passed away, although each of the children comprised Klal Yisrael, they're a component that comprise the totality of Klal Yisrael, but each of the sons is unique in his own right, and they complement in one another to create the totality of Klal Yisrael. Yud is royalty, Yud is also Torah, Levi is this, and each one has his unique characteristics. As we'll see, Moshe also is each one, it's appropriate blessing to guarantee or to facilitate the potential should come to fruition. So Yaakov not only identified what each one was, his bracha actually solidified and put the potential, the dynamic in place that it should be able to evolve to become what it's supposed to become. That was Yaakov's bracha. By first identifying what each one's potential was and what their essence was and what their purpose was. In addition, the bracha it concretized it, it actualized it, and should come to fruition. There's a Ramban in Bereshis earlier when he speaks about the whole concept of Masa Ovasim Labonim, that we find that, and it's the words of Chazal, Midrash, the actions of the forefathers are an indication of what's going to happen later, the history of the Jews. For instance, the Midrash says that Avram went to Egypt. His grandchildren are going to Egypt. That's Golos Mitzrayim, the exile of Egypt. Avram left Egypt. His grandchildren will leave Egypt. Avram left Egypt with great wealth, as it says. He was given unbelievable wealth, him and Lot, when they left Egypt. So when we leave Egypt, we're going to leave with great wealth. And that's the concept of Ma'aseh Ovasim Labonim. That the Avos, what they experienced, the dynamic was set that it should actually take place in the future for the future generations. So he had to go to Egypt because the Jews were meant to go to Egypt. And he left with great wealth because because that was part of the promise, they're going out with great wealth. That's what it's all about. So Ramban writes, and he shows that the Navi, very often, when he would prophesize, he would do an action to indicate what's going to be in the future. That action that he does, when he says his prophecy, he would take a stone and let's say throw the stone. Symbolically, that stone gives that prophecy of the future, which is not in place yet. It gives it some value of reality by doing the action now. Although the dynamic is set due to the prophecy, but the prophecy is something which is intangible. It has to be associated with something tangible. That's Masova similar bonding. That's the whole concept. Yaakov, each child had his uniqueness, had his unique neshama. The neshama of Binyamin is not the neshama of Yosef or of Ephraim and Manasseh. Each one has their own uniqueness. But Yaakov's words, the bracha that he had given them, it's interesting. There's a concept known as tzaddik goes v'akodesh baruch hu mekayim. The tzaddik decrees and Hashem fulfills the decree of the tzaddik. Normally it means that even if Hashem, the Medrash says, ruled that a person should die, and the tzaddik gives a blessing he should live, Hashem will give greater value to the bracha of the tzaddik, and he'll negate his own position and give the tzaddik's bracha precedence over what he wants. That's to that degree that tzaddik goes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The tzaddik decrees, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu fulfills the decree of the tzaddik, regardless of what he initially wanted. So there's a little bit of both. Each of the Shvatim were meant to be who they were meant to be, potentially wise. But what will guarantee that potential should actualize into the future? So there's no question, Yaakov is tzaddik gozer. He's the most special of the patriarchs. He decreed that each one should be what he is. But it was more than, wasn't decreeing only. Firstly, he identified each one's essence, what its potential was, and by adding the bracha, that's giving it greater a guarantee that it should actually come to fruition. Because there's always a kitrug. There's always prosecution, and the many impediments on the way which do not allow things to happen. So Yaakov's bracha set the dynamic in place. It's going to happen regardless. That something cannot interfere, that ultimately it will come to that. That's the idea. But it's av chovivamim. He valued them. Why did he value them? Because due to being the children of Yaakov and receiving the bracha of Yaakov, them meant now, they're in a position now to bring the world to meet its objective, which is what? Which is Kabbalah Torah at Sinai, because only through receiving Torah at Sinai is the world able to come to its state of perfection through the Torah. And this is Bereshis bara Elokim Shemayim v'Soretz, for the sake of the Jewish people. And who are the Jewish people? They're the sons of Yaakov. They're the sons of Yaakov received this blessing, which sets the dynamic and actualizes that potential. And the Torah, and they're the only ones who qualify to receive the Torah. Therefore, it's chovivamim. And therefore, it says, hey, tukal raglecha. If they wouldn't have, they could have all the potential in the world, but if they wouldn't have submitted at the foot of the mountain, received the Torah, it's only half of the equation. It's not the total story. You have to, as we say, you have to close the deal. You can have all the potential in the world. If you don't close the deal, it's not a deal. It's only because tukal raglecha, because at Sinai they submitted raglecha the tach sahor, as the pasuk says that the world is God's aramin, the shemayim is the kisi, v'had horetz is hadom raglov. The earth is what is God's hadam and kaviyochel. That's tukal raglecha. And what did they do at the mountain? What did they accept? That's all malchus. That's all Ola Torah. That's the yoke of Torah. They carried your dictate. They accepted your dictate. That's why it's choviv. We had read in there's a pasuk we had in Bamidbar where Bnei Yisrael is mentioned 5 times in one pasuk, and we know how careful the Torah is not to use one extra word, and yet in one pasuk, the word Bnei Yisrael is mentioned the words 5 times. It doesn't use a pronoun. Oh, contiguous. So the Medrash tells us, and Rashi explains it, that if you love someone like your child, you don't say he. Every time you mention the name, it evokes a certain feeling, love to it when you mention your child's name. So that the Torah mentions Bnei Yisrael 5 times in one pasuk is an indication of Hashem's special love for us. 5 times. So Rashi says, why 5? It's connected to Chamishu Chumash Torah. It corresponds to the 5 Chamishu Chumash Torah. That's why Bnei Yisrael is mentioned 5 times in one pasuk. So what does that mean? How do you understand it? The referring to us by name is an indication of love. And why 5 times? Because 5 corresponds to Chamishu Chumash Torah. We don't need a morale for this. 5. Why does he love us? He's telling us why. Because it corresponds to Chamisha Chumash Torah. Because we are the only ones who accepted the Chamisha Chumash Torah. That is the basis for the love. And God states this clearly. It's undeniable. It's because of the Chamisha Chumash Torah. How? The Torah is so careful not to use an extra word. And in one pasuk it mentions B'nai Yisrael 5 times, which is an expression of love. But why 5? Because the love is based upon Chamisha Chumash Torah. Because we accepted the Torah at Sinai. And this is Av Chovivami. Why does he have that special love for the Shvatim? Because Tukal Raglecha. Because at Sinai, we submitted at the foot of the mountain, Yisum Adabrasecha, we accepted the old Torah. That's the Chamisha Chumash Torah. This is one of the same of the 5 times Bnei Yisrael is mentioned in one pasuk. %80 of the Jews didn't leave Egypt. Only 20%. This is Alice thing also. The numbers never change. This is his that's his Vartar always. Whenever he has Yortzeit Shaldashudas, he talks about this. Okay. So
and I got from you, Rabbi.
80% died during the days of darkness, 20% left. Why? Because the 80% didn't want to leave Egypt. Didn't want to leave Egypt. 20% had the betocham, they wouldn't leave Egypt. How did we know that they had that special trust in Hashem? Because the Torah tells us that when we left Egypt, it says the bread, the dough did not become leavened. And it says they did not prepare provisions for the trip, for the trek into the desert. So Rashi over there says, why is the Torah sharing with us that they didn't prepare provisions? Lahagid shvochen shel Yisrael, to share with us the praiseworthiness of the Jews, that although they had no provisions, they were going into a desert. And this goes back to what the Navi says, name of Hashem. So that you followed me into this desert, unplanted desert, which is not survivable, but your faith in me, that's why you followed me into the desert. And Hashem says, I will never forget chesed nurayach, the chesed of your youth, when our relation, we'll never forget that until the end of time. The Torah Devorah speaks about that midah of zachat chesed nurayach, what it means. To what degree a Jew has to have a relationship even with Rishoyim, because when the Russia was born, he was an innocent child. That goes back to zachat chesed nurayach. That even the Russia Hashem has rachmim, because the Russia didn't start off as a Russia. So things happened why he became a Russia. That's separate. So I asked the question. We come to Kriyas Yam Suf, and it closes on our enemies, and we say Oz Yoshir, and we say Zeh Keli Ve'anveyu. This is our God, and we will extol him. So Rashi cites the Medrash Chazal that God's presence was so palpable that you're able to point with your finger and say Zeh Keli. This is my God. And over there it says, Masherosa Shimchal Yam lo ro Yecheskel. What the maidservant saw at the sea, Hashem's presence, Yecheskel Hanavi did not see that. So we asked them, what did the maidservant see, which Yecheskel did not see? So I said, it's explicit. We said every night by Ma'ariv, and it's really in the Ozi Osher. We say Malchuscha Ruvanecha Bokeyam Lefnei Moshe. Right? That's what we say every night in Ma'ariv. Malchuscha Ruvanecha Bokeyam Lefnei Moshe. And what did they say? Zekei Levan Veyu. They said Zekei Levan Veyu. When they saw Malchuscha, they said, this is Kei Levan Veyu. Hashem Yimloch Lulam Ved. That's what they said. So what did the Jews see at Kriyas Yamsuf when it closed? When they saw all that, they saw Malchus Hashem, whatever that is. They saw the kingship of Hashem. Yecheskel never saw that. The maidservant saw what Yecheskel didn't see. When you see Malchus Hashem and you see God's majesty at that level, and he goes and offers you the Torah, you grab it. You say Nasa v'nishma. We said Nasa v'nishma because God showed us what he is. We saw his majesty. How could you not say Nasa v'nishma? The Goyim never saw Nasa v'nishma, never saw Malchus. Right? See, that's the question. So we said Nasa v'nishma because God showed us his majesty. So did we have much of a choice? It almost was guaranteed. But the question is, why did we merit to see Malchus? You know what we merited? Because although we didn't prepare for provisions, we went into this uncharted desert and we had that faith. That's what we merited to see Malchus. If God would have, the question I asked was, why did 80% of the Jews perish? Hashem should have somehow taken them out and say, look, we'll work it out later. No, because it was essential we should say Nasa v'nishma. To say Nasa v'nishma, you have to have special merit. If the 80% would have gone out, they wouldn't have that special merit. It's only because the 20% had that special merit. Therefore, we merited the Malchus Charuvanecha B'Keyam Lefnei Moshe. Because the ultimate Kabbalah had to be a Nasa v'nishma, Kabbalah Torah. But we were worthy of that because we were worthy to see Malchus. That's what it said.
The non-Jews also saw it, the Rabbi. The Mitzrayim, the Egyptians also saw it.
No. They didn't see anything.
Well,
They didn't see it.
Well,
They didn't see
how could they have not seen it?
If they saw it, they see the sea split, and they're pursuing the Jews into the Yamsuf.
No, but they
saw Malchus. They should have stopped in their tracks.
No, but
That's the question.
But the shir was sung only after the Egyptians.
Yeah, I understand. But we say Malchus Ruvanecha Bokei Yom Lefnei Moshe Bokei. When it split, the Malchus already was saying when it was splitting.
Very good.
Right? So I always tell over the story. You know, there's a famous story. The Chofetz Chaim, his Rebbe's name was Reb Nochem Huradna. Reb Nochem, and he had a picture in his house, the Chofetz Chaim, the pictures, and the only picture he had on the wall was the picture of his Rebbe. His name was Reb Nochem Huradna. What's the story? The Chofetz Chaim, when he was 16 years old, he used to daven in the shul. And 15, 16 years old, and the shamus in the shul, his name was Reb Nochem. And what would be every night after Ma'ariv, he would put away the Sidurim, tidy up the Beis Medrash, close the shades, and lock the door, and he'd stay there by himself. The Chofetz Chaim, as a child, was a child prodigy. He had a photographic memory. He was an orphan. Stories, what he knew. He knew Shas very well by the time he was 12 years old. And he suspected that there's something unusual about this man. Every night he closes up, he tidies up, closes the window shades. Everybody leaves, he locks the door, he's all by himself. The Chofetz Chaim suspected there's something going on in there. So what does he do? He goes and he hides between the oven and one of the pillars that held up the ceiling to conceal himself. And he wants to see what's going to happen. So he hides, and all of a sudden, Reb Nochem makes sure the door's closed, the window shades are closed, and he goes to the bima, and he opens a sefer and starts learning. And as he learns, the whole Beis Medrash starts glowing. And he understands this is the ultimate. There's a kedusha. Literally, it was illuminated. It was something he was radiating. And he waits till he finishes, and then all of a sudden comes out. Chofetz Chaim comes out of his hiding place, and Reb Nachum was shocked. He didn't realize somebody was there. That means the Chofetz Chaim witnessed what was going on. So the Chofetz Chaim says to Reb Nachum, I want to become your student. I want you to be my Rebbe. And Reb Nachum agreed to take him and to mentor him. That's the story with the Chofetz Chaim and Reb Nachum. So Reb Aaron Kotler heard the story. He said, that the Reb Nachum Huradna radiated, and the Beis Medrash was filled with light. I'm not surprised. But the Chofetz Chaim at the age of 16 could see that radiance. That's a shock. That's something very special. At the age of 16, he was already special enough to be privy to that radiance. It speaks volumes of who the Chofetz Chaim was. You understand? The Jews, Sil Malchuscha. We saw it. They went into the sea. They saw nothing. As a result of that, we saw it because we were privy to it because we went into the desert. Once you saw it, Malchuscha, the majesty of Hashem, he offers you his Torah, you grab it. And therefore we said Nasav Nishma.
So just to trace it, so Hashem creates the world. Abraham is the first to identify the monotheistic thing. Hashem sets in motion the entire process, and then Abraham's descendants merit, because of the choice they made, merit to leave to see Malchusha, and then
they didn't know what
they use that evidence. They use that whatever that evidence, if you will, to say Nasav and Ishma, and that's the specialness associated with the Jews.
Correct.
Thank you. Sorry to track us.
Yeah. I always said, it says that who took Moshe out of the water? The daughter of Paro. It says she opened the box and she saw. So Rashi over there said she saw. What did she see? She says Miyalde Yehudim, Miyalde Ivrim. He's a Jewish child. So over there he uses a term that she saw more than Moshe. So Rashi said she saw the Shechina with Moshe. Now, who is at a level to be able to see the Shechina? She's a woman. She's a pagan. But she knew Moshe was special because she saw the Shechina with Moshe. How did she see the Shechina? Now, the Gemara tells us in Megillah, when she went to bathe over there, in the Red Sea, or whatever it was, in the Or, in the Nile, what was she bathing for? She was just going to take a bath. So the Gemara says, she went to convert to monotheism. That was the value of that bathing, immersion in the Nile. After she immerses herself, she sees the box and she retrieves the box. Now she sees the Shechina. A woman who's the daughter of the most advanced civilization, which represents everything negative, the antithesis of Hashem's presence. Paganism at the most extreme level. Witchcraft at the most extreme level. And she, in this darkness, she gives it all up to immerse herself to become a monotheist. That's chus. She was able to see the Shechina with Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore she didn't turn over the box to try to drown him. Because she was privy to something nobody else saw. She saw it. It's the same idea. So that tells us who she was. What was her name? Her name was Basio. Basko. That was her name. She was the daughter of God. Because she accepted, despite everything, she accepted monotheism at that moment.